Here's a question from Craig. So Craig says, what's the best way to apply for visas for my family who are in the Ukraine? And this is a good segue. I have my permanent residency. Thanks. So maybe Anna, did you, this is a little bit of a segue and Igor, we can definitely shift back and talk about what's happening on the ground with people. But Anna, do you have some thoughts for Craig here before we dive too much?
So I can share based on the basis of like what we know so far. So the Canadian government has not announced like a special dedicated channel for visa applications out of Ukraine yet. We know that the visa application centers in Kyiv and Lviv have been closed right now, and sort of and some current immigration files have been transferred to other visa offices, such as in London. This is what I'm learning from our CBA listserv too. So until we hear otherwise, like I would say that you just go to the RCC website right now and just follow the instructions about how to apply for a visitor visa, and then you will get a drop down menu, and then you select your country, and then you basically follow the instructions. I do have a lot of questions towards the Canadian government about how these visa applications from Ukrainian nationals are going to be processed. One critical point, and which is a legal point under the Canadian immigration law, is that anybody who applies to come to Canada as a visitor must demonstrate so-called temporary intent, right? So in their application, so they have to provide documents, explanations, and any evidence to signal to the processing officers that I'm coming as a visitor. I'm going to come, I'm going to stay for my 3 months, 6 months. I have enough money to support myself. Somebody's going to be also providing me with practical help and accommodation and things like that. And then I'm going to leave because I have ties to my home country. This is kind of how these applications get approved. This is how they're assessed. Conversely, visitor applications are most often refused on the basis that applicants just don't provide enough evidence, and they don't persuade decision makers that they have somebody or something to go back to their home country at the end of their visitor stay. So, of course, with the situation in Ukraine right now, as volatile and fast evolving or devolving it would be extremely difficult for anybody on their visitor application to say that, yes, the purpose of my the duration of my intended visit is 3 months or 4 months, and then I have property in Ukraine, I have a job, and I have family, and I'm for sure going to go back to my country at the end of my temporary stay in Canada. So what I would like our government to do is to waive this requirement of temporary intent, that anybody who applies for a visitor visa to come to Canada, they should be basically assessed without having regard to, well, does the person have ties to Ukraine? Are they likely to go back? Because to me, it's a huge legal roadblock.
And Craig followed up by saying, what are the documents needed? Well, like Anna said, we will be in a position shortly where we can give a little bit more instruction. But if you go to the Government of Canada website and you just search visitor visa, how to apply, you'll arrive here. And the instructions on how to move forward are all here. And there's information on basically on the documentation and everything that you need to do to submit those applications. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I would probably, so in response to Craig's question, sorry, go ahead, Igor.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Again, my internet is lagging. So when I hear you stop talking, I speak, and then all of a sudden you start speaking as well. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to make a little note in this regard that there are many people who are in Ukraine and they still ask how they can apply for visa from Ukraine. And I think we have an unfortunate news that unfortunately that's not possible because like those visa offices are closed. And so they have to be outside of Ukraine to apply for those visas and send documents to other visa officers, not the one in Kiev because it's closed, not the one in Lviv because it's not doing anything
Yeah,
right
sorry,
now.
Igor, I would just add a point to that. Like, I'm not sure, like, what is the source of this information? Because my understanding is that the applications are online, right? And normally, the initial application goes to to this visa application center, which is kind of like an agent for the Canadian government to process the applications, collect documents, and send them off to visa offices. So
Yeah,
even though those
the
visa
problem is,
application centers are closed in Ukraine, in theory, because the process is online, right? So in theory, then even those who
yes,
are in
but they
Ukraine
still
should
have to
be
get
able.
the counterfoil, right?
Yeah. So, but like it is possible. Well, to like, for example, even like to send in the passports, and but now what the government is announcing, like facilitative measures. So we don't know exactly yet, but I'm hoping that they're going to put in place some sort of eased version of receiving passports, or maybe even issuing secure documents that could be communicated to the clients electronically without having to go through the actual kind of, like steps of like getting somebody to travel somewhere in person to submit their passport.
Yeah, because
It's
this was what I was really worried about. Like, to get the actual visa in the passport, you have to send it somewhere, but there's nowhere to send it in Ukraine. And to collect it in person, it's like, unless we have more news coming from Canadian government on the actual process, it's just
Yeah, and then
it's,
at this point, I just don't know, like, for example, how even like mail-in infrastructure, to what extent it's disrupted in Ukraine. So if somebody is, let's say, in Kyiv or Cherkasy, can they, like, in like relatively quiet hours, can they go to the postal office to send in like their passport for registered mail? Is that even possible? I just don't have that information right now. Yeah.
yeah, and it's also another factor that I really think a lot of people are interested is, what if they are outside of Ukraine? Can they still apply for visas from outside of Ukraine normally, under normal circumstances? Anamar, can you tackle that also?
sorry, Igor. Sorry, what was that?
Yeah, my question was, if the person with Ukrainian passport is outside of Ukraine, can that person apply for visa to the foreign Canadian visa office in Poland, let's say?
Yeah, if they're like any time that you're in any country and you've been lawfully admitted to that country, you're eligible to submit an application in that country, a temporary resident application. So there's no issues, no restrictions. Even if you start an application, like Anna said, you start the application online in in Ukraine, and then you end up leaving, you're able to leave, that application will continue forward, and you do have the ability to then to notify them in the event it reaches a stage where they're, if they haven't waived the visa, that counterfoil requirement in the passport, you do have the ability to notify them that now you're in a different country, and have that taken care of there. It gets a little cumbersome, but you do have the ability to do that for sure.
Yeah, and again, and so here, like, this is what I'm really hoping that the Canadian government is prepared to do, to waive the obstacle of not having a valid status in a third country. Because normally, as Mark pointed out, you can apply from any country in the world, so long as you have been lawfully admitted there. So if somebody has just entered, let's say, Poland through a land border, and they don't have any status in Poland, so under normal quote unquote circumstances, that would be a hurdle for Canadian immigration, because kind of the thinking is that if you are somewhere else now without a legal status, and you're, again, sort of, quote unquote, you are violating that country's immigration laws, so quite likely you're going to do the same here. And a lot of visitor visas historically have been refused, where people applied from countries where they do not have a valid legal status. And so here I'm really hoping that our government will take this into consideration and will not hold it against any Ukrainian national who fled Ukraine now and they just did not have the time, the opportunity, the resources, kind of the whatever formal channels to regularize their status in that safe third country, like wherever they can sort of take a breather right now and be safe.
Craig just asked what that number was in Ottawa, and this number is available. It's right there, 613-321-4243 if you have any questions. And so that's the direct line, and it's a collect call. So they will accept the charges from wherever you are calling from. So definitely take a look at that. Okay. Let's just